U.S. Secretary of State Marco Rubio testified before the Senate Foreign Relations Committee and told senators, quote, "We're making good and decent progress with Venezuela." And as Venezuela's new leaders move toward closer ties with the U.S., he said there are no plans at this time to take further military action. Today marked the first time that Secretary Rubio faced questions from lawmakers since the raid that captured Venezuela's Nicolas Maduro last month. Joining us now, Senator John Cornyn of Texas, a member of the Senate Foreign Relations Committee. Senator Cornyn, welcome back to Washington Watch. Thanks for joining us.
You bet, Tony.
All right, so the Trump administration said no, they don't see any need for further military action. What do you make of the developments there? Things calming down?
Well, I think it took great courage for President Trump to take the political and other risk to arrest Nicolas Maduro. One of the things I think gets lost in the shuffle is this wasn't a war. This was a law enforcement operation, and of course, we needed to make sure that our agents who were serving this arrest warrant from an indictment in a New York court were safe, and so that required some defensive measures in order to extract him from the country and hopefully bring him to justice. But President Trump has a lot of tools available to him. While Delcy Rodriguez has certainly been part of the Maduro regime, she is, I think, going to have to comply with a lot of the wishes of the U.S. government as we slowly transition to a democratically elected Venezuela. But I think it's been a great success so far.
So how much energy and effort is it going to take on behalf of America to get them onto the right track and moving forward?
Well, I think President Trump has all the leverage he needs. As you know, Venezuela has sort of been a scorpion's nest of problems. Our adversaries like Iran, Russia, and China, and Cuba, all conspiring there, particularly Iran, even with the base of Hezbollah there, which they've used drug proceeds in order to support their proxy in Lebanon, fighting Israelis primarily in that region. So it's going to take a while, but I think the source of revenue that is available to the Venezuelans is their oil. And I think we're going to see this money put into a fund that will actually help the Venezuelan people rather than the mafia that's been in charge of the country. And hopefully over time, I don't know how long, but over time, we'll see more democratically elected officials take charge. But, you know, Maduro and Chavez before him created a police state there. They killed all their competition and surveilled all their citizens and impoverished them all. So they don't have any institutions or actually any leaders that can fill that gap immediately. So it's going to take a little patience.
You know, I think it's very important, Senator, to point out what you just said about who was coming to Venezuela. It was becoming a potential launch pad for attacks on the United States and in this region, this hemisphere, much like what Gaza became to Israel as they were attacked from their southern border by Hamas. So I think it's a national security issue. Obviously, there was a president there that most of the world did not see as duly elected, engaged in criminal activity, but there was a much bigger national security issue there in Venezuela as well, which I appreciate you pointing out. Speaking of Gaza, today, U.S. Ambassador to the United Nations, Mike Waltz, outlined a demilitarized plan. He said it would include disarmament and decommissioning weapons through a process supported by the internationally funded buyback program. How do you see this working out? Who's going to oversee this process?
Well, I think what's happened in Gaza is a miracle, and certainly we know that was where the Hamas attacked innocent Israelis on October the 7th, but it was a hornet's nest of terrorist activity supported by Iran. I'm not quite so sure about a gun buyback program that's going to cause Hamas to disarm. I think they're going to need to be forcefully disarmed, but it's going to take a multinational a group, including Israel. Hopefully, some of the Gulf states will cooperate in the interests of peace in that region. And the fact that Israel is Iran, and particularly these proxies, are a common adversary for so many of these, even Arab states in the area. So I know the president's formed a board of peace. He's invited multinational participation in that. But I think the first step is going to be to force Hamas to live up to the terms of the ceasefire, and that requires disarmament. They're not going to do it voluntarily.
That means somebody's going to have to make it happen. Is that the United States, or are we just going to allow Israel to do that?
Well, I think certainly we need to support Israel in that effort in the interests of our friends and ally, but also in the interests of peace in the region and more broadly, in order to continue to put pressure on the Iranian regime.
Right.
As you know, President Trump has said that if the supreme leader, the Ayatollah, continues to kill innocent demonstrators, there will be consequences. And it looks to me like we're beginning to make a buildup in the region for something to happen. I'm not sure what it is, but I know that Marco Rubio and Secretary Hegseth and General Kane have presented a number of options to the president. I don't know what he's going to choose, but I do think weakening Iran in any way that we can will diminish their support for these terrorist groups that depend on their financial support and otherwise. And so I'm anxiously watching how this develops. But again, Hamas is a terrorist organization, and they're not going to give up on their own.
Well, you mentioned Iran. President Trump on Truth Social warned Iran that a massive armada is headed their way. He said time is running out to make a deal, and if they didn't abandon their nuclear weapons, the next attack would be worse. That sounds pretty clear that something could be in the works. We got 30 seconds left. Yeah,
I would suggest that the supreme leader, the Ayatollah, look at what we did in Venezuela after President Trump gave Nicolas Maduro a deadline to act, a safe trip to a nice, cushy existence somewhere else around the world, if he would then let the democratically elected leaders there take charge. But I think the president is a man of his word. He says he does what he says, and I think something's going to happen. I'm just not sure when.
That may be why he is in hiding. Senator, always great to see you. Thanks so much for joining us.